Welcome to Shifting Veils. I am Michelle.
And I'm Isaiah.
We would like to invite you along as we wander through stories that blur the line between the known and the unknown, the unexplained, the paranormal, and the beautifully strange. Stay with us until the end and share your thoughts. We love hearing how these tales resonate with you.
In this episode, we're diving into something that seems harmless at first glance: nursery rhymes and childhood stories. You know, the sing-songy little verses we all grew up with. But once you start peeling back the layers, things get interesting. A lot of these sweet, familiar rhymes have roots that are unsettling, sometimes downright tragic, and way darker than anyone ever told us as kids. Plague, politics, warnings whispered through generations. These stories carried messages that were never really meant for children at all. So let's wander into the shadows behind the tales we thought we knew and see what's been hiding there all along.
Picture a cold March morning in 1815 in tiny Sterling, Massachusetts. 9-year-old Mary Sawyer wanders into the barn and finds something that will follow her for the rest of her life. One of her father's ewes has given birth to twins. One lamb is lively and nursing, the other is curled in the straw, barely breathing. Her father shakes his head. It will not live, he says. But Mary can't accept that. She begs, and when he finally relents, she brings the fragile creature into the house, wraps it in cloth, and sits by the fire all night. The lamb can hardly swallow, its breath is shallow, yet Mary refuses to let go. By dawn, against every expectation, that lamb stands. From then on, it's hers. The little animal follows her everywhere, answering to her voice and shadowing her steps. One morning after her brother Nat's teasing, she hides the lamb under her desk at the one-room Redstone school. That's crazy to think about schools that were just one room. I mean, I've always known they were like that, but it's just crazy to think
I
to
think
think
it's
about that,
I think it's crazy to think that she can hide a lamb under her desk at the school with one room.
right? It didn't bawl. It
You're
didn't make any
right.
noise.
There was
No one
nothing.
knew.
It's like that's not a lamb under her desk. What am I thinking?
Yeah. Well, for a while it stayed quiet, but when Mary stands to recite, the lamb bolts out, bleeding, and trails her to the front of the room. The schoolhouse erupts in laughter. Even the teacher softens. A visitor that day, a young scholar named John Rulestone, is charmed. He comes back the next morning with a scrap of paper and jots down a few lines that will outlive them all. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Years later, editor Sarah Josepha, I guess is how you say it.
Josepha?
Uh, Josepha Hale. I could have just skipped Josepha and just said Sarah Hale.
Well, we
What?
had
I
to get
make
her whole
things
name out there.
difficult.
It's okay.
She published.
She.
She published the poem in Poems for Our Children, adding stanzas that turn it into a moral little tale. Moral?
I thought you were gonna say mortal little tale.
Mortal. The rhyme spreads through schools and nurseries across America and becomes a beloved children's song. Then in 1877, Thomas Edison uses those very words to test his new phonograph, making Mary Had a Little Lamb the first human voice ever recorded. Mary lived a quiet life and rarely spoke of the lamb until old age. In 1876, she stepped forward to claim the story, even offering stockings knitted from the lamb's wool to help save Boston's Old South Meeting House. She died in 1889 at 83, and today a statue of her lamb stands in Sterling, a small monument to a simple act of mercy. I wonder if those stockings are still in existence. I mean, I know fabrics and things like that rot over time, but I wonder if they kept them, you
I'd
know.
imagine that there's at least one pair in some sort of museum somewhere.
Yeah. So, the next time you hear I need to look that up actually. I'm really curious. But the next time you hear Mary Had a Little Lamb, remember it's more than a nursery rhyme. It's a story about a girl who wouldn't give up, a lamb that survived, and how a single act of kindness can echo through history, even becoming the first sound captured by
By
technology.
by texting. That was the first act of texting.
Technology. Can you imagine if her dad said no when she wanted to take it in the house? Mary Had a Little Lamb would have never been.
Oh, it was about Mary Had a Little Lamb. I thought this was about Jack and the Beanstalk.
That's funny.
Yeah. Sorry. This is a
I'm just
stupid joke.
I'm thinking about all of the not just dads, but the moms too, because I almost was one of them. That the child is like, but daddy or but mama, it needs me. I need to save it,
Mm-hmm.
and mom and
Mm-hmm.
dad says no. Mm, one of my children has a cat that is exactly that story. I thought it was darling. It was rescued. I mean, this thing, it didn't even weigh a pound. Was covered in, it's white, but it was so covered in fleas and flea poop and blood from the fleas that it was black pretty much. It was a black cat. And, she fought with me tooth and nail about that cat, and I finally caved. And I'm so glad that I did, because I think we all needed that cat. So,
Oh.
yeah.
She had a little cat. Its fur was white as snow.
Yeah, exactly. He turned out to be a flame point Siamese. So he's not pure white now, but when he was a baby, he was pure white. Now he's got like gold on his face, and his tail, like a stripe down the top of his tail, is kind of
Hmm.
gold. He's a sweetie though.
Cute
He's a
cat.
big boy now.
Yeah, I bet. Long before anyone pictured Humpty Dumpty as a cheerful little egg, people were whispering much darker theories about where the rhyme came from. One of the oldest stories ties it to King Richard III. Richard had scoliosis, and his enemies mocked him as humpbacked. His reign was short, violent, and ended on the battlefield at Bosworth in 1485. According to legend, his horse was named Wall, and when Richard fell from it, his men couldn't save him. Who names their horse Wall? So those familiar lines, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, might have been a not so subtle jab at a king's brutal downfall. Another version drops us right into the smoke of the English Civil War. In 1648, Colchester was under siege, and the defenders had a massive cannon perched on top of St. Mary's at the Wall Church. They nicknamed it Humpty Dumpty, and it was manned by a soldier known as One Eyed Jack. It pounded away at enemy forces until the church tower took a direct hit. The cannon toppled, shattered on the ground, and that was that. No soldiers, all the king's horses and all the king's men, couldn't put it back together again. In this telling, Humpty isn't an egg at all, but a war machine destroyed beyond repair. The first printed version we know of showed up in 1797 in Samuel Arnold's Juvenile Amusements, and it looked a little different. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Fourscore men and fourscore more could not make Humpty Dumpty where he was before. It wasn't meant to be a nursery rhyme, it was a riddle, and the answer was probably something fragile like an egg. That idea stuck, and by the 19th century, illustrators like John Tenniel, in Through the Looking Glass, turned Humpty into the round egg shaped character we all know today. What started as political commentary and wartime symbolism slowly softened into a children's verse. But underneath the playful rhythm is a pretty stark message. Humpty Dumpty is about things that break and can't be fixed, whether it's a fallen king, a shattered cannon, or just a cracked egg. The rhyme is a reminder that some falls are final. So when kids chant it on the playground, they're echoing centuries of history. Monarchs collapsing, fortresses crumbling, iron splitting apart. Humpty Dumpty was never just an egg. He was a king, a cannon, a symbol of ruin, and his fall still echoes in the rhyme we sing today.
um, think of Tudor England for a moment. Mary Tudor, daughter of Henry. What number is that? I wasn't in school during Roman numerals.
That's 8.
8. Yeah, I missed that week. So.
V is 5. X is 10.
And yeah. And then you
And,
add 3.
and then you just count the ones after that.
Yeah. Okay.
There
Got
you
it.
go.
I won't remember that next time, but thanks. Mary Tudor, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, grows up devoutly Catholic while the country around her is tearing itself apart over religion. When her half brother Edward the
6.
Sixth,
6, yeah.
I was trying to get the cogs in my brain to crank. Edward the Sixth dies. Mary takes the throne in 1553 and sets out to restore Catholicism. No half measures.
So,
Her, yeah.
as a note for later, next time when you're doing these, you could just put the number instead of the Roman numerals.
In the past, I have done that for myself. But I slacked apparently, and I'm paying for it now, so it's all good. Everyone can laugh at me how I'm horrible at Roman numerals.
We're all
I
horrible at something. Don't even worry about
well, yeah, I'm also horrible in algebra too, since we're talking about numbers. Um, Not that I've ever come across a time I needed to use it in my adult life, but anyway, her reign her reign quickly earned a brutal nickname. Determined to stamp out Protestant reform, she ordered the execution of nearly 300 Protestants by burning. That smoke and those deaths are what turned her into Bloody Mary. In the popular imagination, to many, she was stubborn and terrifyingly uncompromising, a queen trying to drag England back from under Rome. That brings us to the nursery rhyme, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? It sounds innocent, but some people read it as a dark little allegory. The garden isn't flowers, it's a grim metaphor for the graves filling with Protestant martyrs. The little images and the rhyme get darker under that lens. Silver bells might be church bells, or in a harsher reading, instruments of torture. Cockle shells could point to pilgrimages and Catholic devotion, or be read as something far more sinister. And pretty maids all in a row, some say it's rows of nuns, others imagine condemned people lined up for execution. By the time the rhyme was printed in 1744, England was firmly Protestant, and the verse worked as a way to mock Mary and keep the memory of her cruelty alive without saying it outright. It became a kind of whispered history, passed to children as a sing-song warning. Mary's reign wasn't the bloodiest Tudor chapter. Henry VIII's terror was worse in scale, but her actions left a mark. Her marriage to Philip II of Spain stoked fears of foreign control. Rebellions flared, and when she died in 1558, Elizabeth I took the throne, and the story of Mary hardened into legend. So next time you hear that nursery rhyme, remember it might be doing more than teaching a tune. Behind the sing-song cadence, it's a story of power, religion, and violence, a reminder that even the sweetest verses can hide some very dark histories.
I'm going to be honest. I thought for a second there during your first paragraph or two what you were going to be going about Bloody Mary, in the mirror and stuff.
Yeah.
Because you
Well,
mentioned Bloody Mary at one point.
I do think that that's where it came from.
You think that's where? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I wonder why she appears in mirrors.
I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe she
Think.
was vain. She likes to look at herself.
That could be, and maybe that's why the pretty maids were all executed. If that was the pretty maids that were being lined up as an execution,
Possibly.
because she wanted to be the prettiest.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's a whole fairy tale line right there. Think back to the 18th century when a lullaby showed up in Mother Goose's melody under the name Hush-a-Bye Baby. The words are simple and a little eerie. Hush-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down tumbles baby, cradle and all. On the surface, it's a lullaby, but the note that came with it made the meaning clear. This wasn't just about soothing a child. The cradle in the treetop was a warning about pride and power. Climb too high, and you're bound to fall. There are a few stories people point to. One is about Betty Kenny, an 18th century English mother who supposedly hung cradles from a huge yew tree so babies could sway in the breeze. It's a striking image, but also a risky one. If a branch snapped, the consequences were terrifying. Who? Why would it? I don't know. Why would that thought ever come to somebody's mind? I know.
Let's put the baby in the tree. But if the branch falls, you know.
It's a windy day. Let's put him in the tree. Yes. Won't even think about those consequences. Let's just hang him up there. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, and people talk smack on like my parents' generation for having the PSA go out. Do you know where your children are?
Mm-hmm.
And all of us going home whenever the street lamps, flickered on.
Mm-hmm.
This is this is way
What do you think?
worse.
What do you think their PSA would be?
I don't know. I will say I'm glad that I grew up in the era that I did. I don't think there was anything wrong with uh coming home when the lights flickered on and parents getting a PSA about where are your children. Okay, I'm
No,
happy about
not at
that.
all.
Um I had fun. But yeah, for this the PSA, I don't know.
Is the wind blowing? Have you checked on your child's branch?
Right. And have you brought your child in from I mean, I keep thinking about whenever you go get your clothes off the line, but it's your child in a tree.
It's getting ready to rain. Better go get the kids.
Right. I don't know.
Uh,
Weird shit.
Another version ties the rhyme to politics. In the late 1600s, Protestants feared King James II and his Catholic heir. The baby in the tree becomes a symbol for a fragile dynasty perched in danger. When the bough breaks, the dynasty falls and a new ruler takes over. Some say the image comes from Native American cradle boards hung in trees, a practice that amazed early European visitors. That explanation is gentler, but it still carries the same sense of vulnerability. Infants suspended above the ground, exposed to wind and weather. Well,
Okay.
it's not like we had like a tornado going. It's like let's hang this baby up in the air.
Okay, cradle boards are way different than cradles.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
I like the idea. So, you have your child on a cradle board and they're hanging from a branch. It sounds horrible, but and you are getting your washing done. You're sowing seeds. You're planting, you're working, you're whatever. You can get it done and you don't have to worry about stuff getting at your baby.
So, all right,
And you can see them, you know?
let's think about this for a second too. With the cradle, you want to actually suspend it in air so that the wind will rock it, right? But
Yeah.
the baby boards that we're talking about now,
Mhm.
like how much you want to bet that when it was hung, it was closer to the tree, like the thickest part of that
Mhm.
bough,
Yeah.
and leaning like laid against the tree, like the stalk of the tree, right? I can't
Possibly.
think of the word.
I don't know. We have so many ants down. I don't know. You have ants up there. We have ants here. I wouldn't want to lean up against a trunk.
I mean, that if there's ants, they're gonna be crawling on the branches too.
Eventually, yeah.
But the point is, or what I'm trying to get at, is that most likely some somebody that's done it in practice, not just I'm gonna put my baby up in the air to sway in the wind so it'll
Mm.
chill my baby out. Somebody that's like, I gotta take care of this. I'm gonna hang this baby on the tree. That does sound bad. Um,
It sounds bad, but I feel like the level of vulnerability is a lot less in a cradle board because if you've ever seen, and I know you probably have, I don't know if our listeners have, but if you've ever seen those cradle boards and a child in them, they are secure. I mean,
mhm,
more secure than a child is in a child car seat.
mhm.
It's not the same as laying a baby in a cradle. They're not secure. They flail their arms and legs. These babies are secure. I mean,
Yeah,
they're not moving,
I
you
can't think
know?
I can't think of the word, but when you swaddle, when you swaddle your
Yeah.
child, that's basically
Hmm.
what you're doing with them in a cradle board. Is you're swaddling the child up. You're tying them, to this board basically.
But they're also like the head is also strapped,
Mhm. Yeah.
so you don't have to
Well,
worry about their head
you can't be lolling a
neck
baby's
control.
head.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Too young to headbang.
mhm.
Whatever its origin, Rockabye Baby isn't just a soft tune. It's a parable about fragility and ambition. The cradle stands for power, the wind for fate, and the breaking bough for the moment everything collapses. So when parents hum that lullaby, they're echoing centuries of warnings. Even the sweetest songs can carry shadows of danger, politics, and mortality. Rockabye Baby is less a simple bedtime tune and more a reminder that what rises too high can fall. As the cradle falls silent, the lullaby fades into shadow. The gentle rocking gives way to footsteps in the dark, soft, hurried, and uncertain. From the hush of the nursery drifts a new refrain, sharper and more uncanny. Three tiny figures scurrying through moonlight, blind yet bound together. The baby's dream dissolves into the chase of the mice, and the lullaby becomes a cautionary tale.
You've probably learned the rhyme as a silly little ditty about three mice and a farmer's wife, but it's darker than it sounds. The version we know was first printed in 1609 as a musical round, and even then the words were oddly violent. Three mice chased by a farmer's wife who cuts off their tails with the carving knife. Adults at the time didn't hear rodents so much as politics. The farmer's wife is often read as Queen Mary the First, Bloody Mary, and the three blind mice are thought to stand for the Oxford martyrs, Thomas Cranmer, Nicholas Ridley, and Hugh Latimer. These were Protestant bishops who refused to recant and were burned at the stake in 1555. Their blindness was symbolic, seen as blind to the Catholic truth Mary defended, and the gruesome tale cutting may have been a coded way to talk about their fate without naming the queen. By the 19th century, the rhyme had softened into a nursery chant. When J. O. Hallowell included it in his 1842 collection, the violent political edge faded and kids started singing about harmless mice instead. But the original lines still carry that memory of persecution and punishment. So next time you hear three blind mice see how they run, remember it's not just a playground rhyme, it's a little piece of Tudor history wrapped in a sing song faith defiance and a brutal crackdown turned into a children's verse. Over time, Queen Mary's image shifted from a real monarch to a shadowy figure in folklore, and these rhymes helped keep those darker stories alive even as they became bedtime rituals.
When kids sing London Bridge is Falling Down, grown ups once heard echoes of that long history. Fires, Viking raids, and the constant struggle to keep the bridge standing. One old tale even points to 1014. 10, yeah, I guess that 1014 works. I was going to say 1014. When Olaf the Second of Norway supposedly pulled the bridge down with ropes and fire, sending defenders into the river. That kind of violent memory could easily turn into a chant that children would carry on. There's an even darker whisper attached to the rhyme, immurement. the medieval practice of burying someone alive inside a building to make it hold. Some historians think stories about children being entombed in the bridge's foundations were meant to explain why structures sometimes stood or fell. The repeated falling down in the song might have been a grim reminder of what happens when sacrifices aren't made. The fair lady in the verse has been variously identified as queens who managed the bridge's funds or as the supposed victim of such rites. By the 18th century, the rhyme shows up in Tommy Thumb's Pretty Songbook and starts to sound more like the playground game we know. Kids formed arches with their arms and trapped playmates as the bridge fell. Verses about rebuilding with iron, steel, or wood turn the whole thing into a kind of running joke about trying to fix what keeps breaking. So the next time you hear London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady, remember it's more than a sing song. It's a little chronicle of ruin, of invasions, fires, political jabs, and even whispered sacrifices, wrapped up in a tune that children have been humming for generations. Under the playful rhythm lies a long history of things that crumble, and the uneasy stories people told to make sense of why.
A lot of nursery rhymes and fairy tales didn't start out as sweet bedtime stories. Many of them were born from hunger, fear, persecution, or political jokes whispered in secret. Under the playful rhythms are tales of famine, torture, and warnings passed quietly from one generation to the next. Take Hansel and Gretel, for example. In medieval Europe, famine wasn't rare, it was a constant threat. Crops failed, winters dragged on, and families were pushed into impossible choices. The Brothers Grimm eventually wrote down the version we know, but the roots of the story reach all the way back to the Great Famine of the 14th century. The tale opens with parents who are starving and desperate, deciding to abandon their children in the forest. As horrifying as that sounds, it reflected real accounts from the time, families who simply couldn't feed everyone and had to make choices no one should ever face. Then there's the gingerbread house. Today it feels magical and whimsical, but in the original context, it was more like a cruel illusion, sweetness hiding danger, and the witch who fattens children to eat them. She embodied the darkest fear of famine-stricken villages, cannibalism, a taboo that haunted communities pushed to the brink. What we're left with now is the softened version. Clever Hansel, brave Gretel, and their victory over the witch. But underneath that ending is the story's original purpose, a reflection of starvation and survival, showing how hunger can twist love into cruelty and turn desperation into horror. I think about the all these things we're talking about, these nursery rhymes and stories, and I see them a little bit different. Like I've always known these things about them, where they originally the source was. Having um, kids, I still told these stories, and I still uh, sang these nursery rhymes, and having grandkids now, it's the same. I don't. In a way, you're kind of like, oh, well, I don't want to sing that to my kid. That's horrible, but it's history. Um, it's history, and I think even though your child at a young age doesn't really understand the origin of it, um, someday whenever they do learn the origin of it, it'll become something, some part of history that they have now always known, like from the very beginning. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think that that kind of adds to maybe I'll say joy for me and you, maybe not so much joy for everybody, but um, being able to introduce the truth of the lyrics to our children, not
Hmm.
letting them have to like wander or ponder or search, but being like, did you know actually that these rhymes that I've been singing to you all this time
Hmm.
actually mean this? And I
Yeah.
think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And as far as like the Grimm's tales and what's his name? Something Anderson. I think he's another one that wrote fairy tale. He's the one that wrote My Little mermaid and stuff like that, or
Okay.
the Little Mermaid. I can't think what his name is, but the way that a lot of those old tales are before they got to the day and age now were darker. They were
Excuse me.
grimmer. They were of a different time where, they were cautionary tales. We have tales of like, Bloody Mary, where it's like, don't say Bloody Mary's name in the mirror 3 times and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
back then they had different stories. The mermaid, you know, couple centuries old spoiler, but at the end of The Little Mermaid, the mermaid actually turns into sea foam. She does not get to live and have a happy ending and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's weird while I was sitting there reading about being reminded about the witch, being symbolism for the fear of cannibalism. My mind immediately went, and I don't know how it couldn't, because it's just so much in our faces right now. My mind went directly to how I'm so sick of this name, but how the word pizza has been referenced like over 900 times in all the Epstein emails, and how people are believing that pizza, it's definitely code, but they're believing that it's code for like children and babies.
Hmm.
And all the different places in history where cannibalism pops up. That's where my mind went. And then I was like, we don't have a nursery rhyme for Jeffrey Epstein.
Not yet.
Why don't we have nursery rhymes anymore? All these are really old.
We don't have nursery rhymes anymore because everybody makes them into songs now. They are
True.
blatant songs, right, in
You're
pop
right.
culture.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, but that's where my mind went.
So technically, if you want to read the song lyrics as a nursery rhyme, you could.
You could,
Technically.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the code, like that's the code words are a thing that still to this day. And it's
Mhm.
totally the same thing too. You're right though. Um like with Humpty Dumpty, I knew that for being the canon that they spoke of.
Yeah.
Um and that was the revealing that I had as opposed to any of the others that we talked about there. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
I think the first nursery rhyme that like I learned like the actual meaning behind the lyrics was Ring Around the Rosie.
That was one of my first ones.
Yeah. Yep.
That and the London Bridge is falling down
Yeah.
was one because we did play that in the playgrounds and stuff where
Yeah.
we would collapse a bridge on somebody in the middle, and yeah, it was always
Mhm.
like, why are we doing this?
Because it's fun.
Well, no, that was what spurred me to try and find out what the
Oh yeah.
lyrics meant. I was like, why are we collapse? Why is the bridges falling on this person going through? Why? And then you find out, and you're like, huh. Fifth, fourth, fifth grade, you're sitting there going, okay, all right.
Right.
But realistically, how many cultures have we known to like make sacrifices for the better of something when it
Yeah.
comes to people? Like people, sacrificing virgins to volcanoes or people to volcanoes or, making that sacrifice. Then there is also Little Red Riding Hood. In today's story of Red Riding Hood, she is saved by a huntsman, but in Charles Perrault's 1697 version, there was no rescue. The girl and her grandmother were eaten by the wolf, and the story ended there. Why so bleak? The wolf was not just an animal, it symbolized predatory men. The tale was a warning to young women. Do not stray from the path, do not trust strangers, or you may be devoured. It was less a bedtime story than a cautionary parable teaching vigilance in a world where innocence could be exploited.
We can't forget about Baba Black Sheep. The sing-song rhyme about wool may seem harmless, but it hides economic oppression. In 1275, King Edward I imposed a harsh wool tax, demanding a third of every fleece for the crown, a third for the church, and leaving only a third for the farmer. A third is a lot. The rhymes lines, one for the master, one for the dame, and one for the little boy who lives down the lane, echo this division. Some interpretations even tie it to the slave trade, where wool and textiles were bound up in colonial exploitation.
There's also Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush. This is a cheerful song, but it began in a grim place, Wakefield Prison in England. Female prisoners were said to march around a mulberry tree in the yard for exercise. The rhyme, sung in a circle, echoed their routine. What children later played as a game was once a reflection of incarceration and punishment.
What unites these tales is that they were never meant purely for children. They were oral histories, political satire, and cautionary lessons disguised in rhyme. Hunger, tyranny, and danger were woven into their verses, softened only later when they entered nurseries. So when we sing Baba Black Sheep or tell of Hansel and Gretel, we are repeating stories born of famine, taxes, prisons, and warnings. They remind us that even the gentlest rhymes carry echoes of survival and struggle. In truth, nursery rhymes are not just playful ditties. They are fragments of history, carrying the dark lessons of the past into the voices of children. We've wandered through the shadows and origins of nursery rhymes today, but the world of folklore is vast and endlessly strange. Do you have a favorite rhyme or a story we didn't mention? I'd love for you to share it, whether it's one that haunted you as a child or one that still lingers in your imagination. Add your voice to the circle and let's keep these stories alive together.